Okay, I just made the assignment on Google Classroom for if you're writing. You just, like we've been doing, just take a picture when you're done. And you can attach it there if you're going to type it. If you want to just attach what you're going to type on now, and that way you're good.
Mr. Linak, can
Yeah.
I just oh, never mind.
Okay. Oh, jeez. Who's throwing dishes? All right. Everyone good with notes and something to write with? Oh,
Wait.
jeez. Oh. Just have your wherever you stopped in your notebook with Rome. That's fine. You don't need to open your book.
I don't.
3, 2, 1, screen. Nice. Okay. Let me get situated for a second. Just make sure people can just join if they get disconnected. Okay. I'm gonna mute everyone. And kind of like what you do in class, anywho. Keep in mind if you got questions as we're kind of going over stuff, just hit the raise your hand tab thingy on the bottom of your screen, and I'll see you. Like I got the list of people, and I'll see you got your hand up, and I'll call on you. And then whenever we get to your group, so like our first one, we're just gonna go in order. So like Claire, Ava, Whitney, I'm gonna have like those people unmuted so they can present their slides. Sound good? Cool. Then let me start with the lattes. So you do not need to write what they have. I'm gonna share mine after them. Here, let me go back half a second. I'll show you what mine looks like. Here's like mine. I'm gonna share mine after. So don't freak out. It's okay. We can do this. All right, ladies, are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Let me unmute you. Sorry, Whitney. I thought I unmute you. Good now, I think. Yeah? Okay. Ready? Family, society, women, and children.
The head of the Roman family was the father. He owned all the property and had control over other members in the household. Roman society disapproved of a father's punishing his family without a good cause. Women in the Roman family enjoyed some freedom. Roman women were expected to run the household and take care of the children. Women could inherit property and run a business while their husbands were away. Roman women had little power and could not vote.
Children.
Most people gave their children some education at home. Boys were from wealthy families and went to private schools. Daughters stayed home and learned household skills. Girls normally married around 14, while boys married later.
All right, nice job, ladies. Oh. All right, nice jobs. Okay. So our next group will be social classes, which we'll come back to in half a second. Of all the notes that you're going to get from me, this is probably the longest one. So, all right. So Roman life. First part we looked at was kind of what was the role of men, women, and children, basically. So as you heard the lady say, family was the first part. If you just want to title family. If you want to do a letter A, feel free. But the family, familia, the papa was in charge. The father was the head of the family. I think today it kind of depends on your family, but it's kind of changed, right? Sometimes it's mom's like in charge, sometimes it's dad. It really just sometimes mom and dad have like a pretty equal balance. So, and then and dad's gonna be like in charge of the household. So any big decisions for the house, like financial decisions or anything like that, dad makes those decisions. And that's a wordy one. So you can shorten it. It's kind of wordy, but basically the last thing all it's saying, Roman society, much like us, didn't really approve of like abusive fathers or fathers who punish for no reason. So the third bullet point, it's long, so you can shorten it up. Don't write that whole thing, but Roman society. So you could just say in Rome, much like us today, they didn't like abusive fathers. So it wasn't something that was accepted. Okay. If you're not done writing, can you do like the raise your hand thingy so I can see if you're finishing up? Everyone good? Okay. So the last one, again, you can just shorten. They just didn't support. Okay, Brock, thanks. They just didn't support abusive fathers. That's all you got to put for the last thing. So just like us, they were against abuse. So like us today, we don't support abuse. There's a bunch of programs and things in our society against, abuse. So, all right, I'm going to move on. So Brock, you could just say, if you're on the last one, they don't like abusive fathers like us today. Women's roles, they do have some freedom in Rome, kind of like we saw in Greece. So Rome and Greece are real similar in a lot of ways. And if you remember back to when we talked about like the origins, like Romulus and Remus, they kind of were a Greek settlement first before they became Roman. Kind of like we were an English colony before we became America. Same kind of idea. Women run the household, and I know we just said men run the house. Men kind of make the final decision. Women are in charge of like the house duties, so like cooking and cleaning and blah blah blah, that stuff. And they're expected to take care of children. So kind of like we've talked about all year, right? Also, I think the next one is children's. No, women. And just like we saw in Greece, women could inherit property or run a business, especially when their husband was away. So kind of like we saw both in Greece and Sparta. If the men were off at war, or let's say, God forbid, their husband got killed in war, women would then inherit their business. So like, let's say they owned a restaurant in the downtown Rome. The wife would run it while the husband's away, if he were away. And if he were to pass away, she'd take over. And one big difference between then and now, which you got to kind of remember, disease was really deadly back then. A disease like the coronavirus would have been really, really bad back then because they don't have like modern medicine like we do. So like we can kind of quarantine people when people get sick. Think of like anytime you've had to go to the hospital, all the stuff that you've been hooked up to and all the doctors you saw. Most of that didn't exist in Rome. So if you got like the coronavirus or the flu, it was really dangerous for anybody. Whereas today, it's not so much the case that way, right? And women couldn't vote. Tell me something that's new in world history. I know. Anyone got a question so far? Coolio. All right. done writing or typing. Solid. Just do the raise your hand thingy on the right if you're finishing. Last one's easy. Women couldn't vote. Tell me something that's new, Mr. Lynak. I know. Hashtag old world problems. All right, the last one is children. Most children were educated by their parents. So your average child, the poor children and stuff, their parents would educate them. However, wealthy children would go to private schools. And when we say private schools, Queen of All Saints is a private school. You got to pay tuition to go there, right? But we're not necessarily exclusive to not allow like students to come join. So by private schools here, they mean like they paid a lot of money that most people didn't even have. So, and whoa, spam, take it easy. Daughters often stayed home and learned from their mothers. So really, it just depended how educated your mom was to depend how educated you became if you were a daughter. So if your mom was wealthy and she knew how to read and write, she knew how to do math, you probably learn all that stuff too. However, if your mom was like a basket weaver and she worked with your dad who made baskets, which I know sounds like a funny job, but you know, think of all the plastic bags and stuff we use today. People would put stuff in baskets. So let's say that's your mom and she doesn't know how to read or write. Well, you learn how to make baskets and weave and take care of kids and all that stuff. So that would be your education. And the last. Goyles were actually usually married off at age 14. Usually that was like the wealthier girls. Not so much the poor. But boys generally got married later in life. So boys at this time, by 14, at your current age through like high school, boys are being educated usually in some kind of schooling, or they maybe were working under like a blacksmith, learning how to become a blacksmith. Whereas girls generally were just educated by mom, and then by teenage years, they would get married. If you were wealthy, typically your dad's gonna marry you off to another family who he wants to like maybe make a deal with or something. Yeah, and then use you as like ways to get deals done, I guess, if you will. Yeah, Brock, what's your question? Oh, there you go.
So you said if like the boys get married like later in life,
Yeah.
the girls get married like at 14.
Yeah.
Who would they marry? They
Girls.
marry, like wealthy boys.
Girls, yeah, usually. It was usually if you're a wealthy girl, you'd be getting married younger, like at 14. And yeah, typically you'd be getting married to like a senator or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, and it was usually like when you get to the Middle Ages, you would see that kind of stuff where you would make an alliance with another family. So like, hey, I'll work with you and sell you stuff for money if our son and daughter can get married. So it wasn't necessarily for love. Whew. Everyone good? Yeah. Woods, did you have a question?
Just answer my question.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and this will actually kind of be a thing in the ancient worlds and really into like the Middle Ages. If you were like a prince or princess, princes usually got educated and would like not necessarily get to marry for love either. It was usually for alliances. So yeah. Or when we get to the Middle Ages, well, we won't, but if we were to, you would marry for land and wealth. So let's say Brock owns the state of Georgia and the girl he's promised to marry owns New York, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. That means their children would own all four of those states. So that's why people would get married. So like, yeah, you can see how that's a bunch of power and money. So yeah, that was a big part of it. All right. Going to our social classes, which is Brock, Colin, and me nerd. So let me unmute Brock. There you are, Colin. And nerd.
I got first slide.
I know I saw the other Andrew. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Found him.
Bernard.
Found him. Maybe. There we go. Okay. You guys ready?
Yup.
Social classes.
Social classes. Social classes changed over time. The plebeians and patricians evolved into higher and lower classes. There was a middle class that developed. Middle class belonged to the business leaders and the officials. Farmers were one of the lower classes in Rome.
Prisoners of war. Up to the third population were slaves. The slaves were throughout Roman society. Some of the slaves worked a low-level salarial positions. Also, some of the slaves performed all of the jobs requiring physical labor. The slaves worked in mines, on large estates, and as servants.
Nice. Alright, nice job, guys. So, here's what I got. Whee. Musical slides. Alright, slurves. So our social classes. So Roman social classes, kind of like we talked about before. Last week, was it? Our plebeians and patricians are like your major two that we start with. Remember, that was basically your rich and your poor. Plebeians being the poor, patricians being your rich. But later on, it's going to kind of evolve to kind of look a little more like ours. So as like wealth became more common, you'll see a like patrician or upper class still. There will actually be like a middle class. So you may not have been born into a rich family, but maybe you became like a very successful businessman or woman, or maybe you became like a general or something in the military. So you can kind of get some kind of wealth. And then, of course, you always will have a lower class. Nice. And like I just said, wealthy business leaders, and technically it could be men or women, depending on circumstances, right? And just general officials, meaning like people in the government, people who help the government in different ways, could become successful and be in the middle class. And that's kind of how it is today for us too. It's kind of like the rags to riches idea. You could be born poor, but doesn't mean you have to stay or you will always be poor. But it usually isn't easy to become middle class. It usually takes a lot of hard work. Yeah, Brock.
Sorry, I have one more
You're okay.
thing to say.
No, it's fine.
So, this is kind of like the same stuff we said. So, would we have to take all these notes? Because this is kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, just jot down unless you got them already.
Okay.
If you wrote some down for your slideshow, you don't need to again, but
Okay.
yeah. And then my next slide is just on slaves, and I think it's just as short. I think it's a little shorter than this actually. I see some people writing still, sorry. All right. Next bit's on slaves. If you want to write the little title, slaves. And again, if you've been like numbering or lettering them, that's fine. If you want to do like letter A, B, C for these titles, that's cool. I do suggest, like, if in general, because I noticed when some people took notes, they would just have like a wall of written notes. Good idea to just like write these kind of titles. It kind of helps break stuff up. And really, like, as like a future high school tip, when you come to like start the studying for tests, whether it's science, this class, language arts, whatever, having that organized like that kind of makes it easier for you to find later. So just keep that in mind. All right. Moving on to slaves. Oh, JK. Farmers were the low class. Man. It's the lowest class for farmers. That's going to be the most common thing through all of history. The poorest people were usually farmers. So. All right. I'm going to move on. Last one was just farmers are usually your poorest group of people. All right, slaves. About a third of Roman people were slaves. So a third of their population were actually slaves. That's an insane amount of people. Let's say the Roman Empire had 20 million people in it. 1/3 of 20 million is almost 9 million people. Woo! It's crazy. No, 6 million. Sorry, that was some bad math. 7 million. I guess it'd be 7 million. Like 6.8 million or something. Anyways. Slaves were usually prisoners of war, which you could just abbreviate as POWs. Or, here in Rome, they could be born into slavery. So let's say your mom and dad were captured in war. They were Carthaginian, let's say. And your mom was pregnant. And you were born. You weren't born free. You were now born a slave. So it's sad. Yeah, Alex?
Are we doing all the presentations today?
No, we're not going to do all of them.
Okay.
We'll probably just do one more group and then we'll call it a day.
Okay.
Luca, yeah?
Jack keeps calling me and he says that he's waiting in the waiting room.
There isn't a waiting room. He could just join.
Yeah, he says he's waiting in the waiting room.
Weird. Tell him to rejoin because there shouldn't be a waiting room.
Alright.
Thanks. All right, and slaves, like the guys said, generally worked in some of the most labor-intensive jobs, meaning really hard-working jobs. So, like, the jobs that took the most amount of people and was the worst kind of work, it's what slaves did. And here in Rome, their masters, the slave owners, were usually pretty cruel. They didn't treat them as equals or as human. They were pretty horrible to them. And because of that, you often saw slave revolts happen in Rome. It was a pretty common thing. And in fact, one of the most famous ones was a gladiator named Spartacus, who actually led a revolt against Rome. There's actually a really good flow cab on it if you want to watch it. Alright. So revolts are common. They're not really nice to their slaves. They're pretty cruel. Think of American slavery. Rome was kind of similar. That being said, I'm going to show you some pictures here, kind of showing you jobs of slaves. And none of our slave revolts are going to be successful in Rome. Spartacus was probably the most successful, if you will, because it lasted, I think, almost a year. And what had happened was his story is cool because he was a former gladiator who, again, gladiators were slaves. Rarely could people volunteer to be a gladiator. I think there's stories of people who owed a lot of money who would do that to pay off their debts. But for the most part, it was slaves. Spartacus was one of the most successful gladiators. So think of like one of the best soccer players in the world. He was like that. And one day, because again, he's a slave, he kind of was tired of his master, so he killed him. Him and the other gladiators at his house, if you will, killed his master, and they revolted. And they actually led a crazy army of slaves, former gladiators, and they fought against Rome. And they actually like fought several battles and took out many Roman soldiers until Roman legions showed up. Which, remember, like the Carthage Punic Wars, Roman legions were like the best soldiers in Rome. So it took Rome's best to defeat them. Crazy. Here's some quick pictures. The top right one, where there's a African guy, have it out of your mind that slaves were all black. If you look in this picture, all these guys in like the blue were all like gladiator slaves. It was all sorts of races and cultures. It wasn't just Africans. So like this guy's like a Spanish guy. This guy might be like Germanic or Italian or Greek. It could be all kinds of people who could be slaves. Anyone who was conquered in war. This top left picture is kind of showing you mines. Mines was actually like the worst type of work. You're most likely to die there because technology. There could be a cave-in. That ain't gonna be good. Also, what most people don't think about in a mine is not only is the air from digging all that stuff up kind of dirty and bad to breathe in, but you could also, the lack of actual clean air like oxygen, because if there's a bunch of people working down there like this, carbon dioxide is going to build up slowly because all these people breathing out. So it's going to be dangerous in that regard. And then down here, the bottom left is kind of showing you how like slaves were often servants for the wealthy. And then on the right, this is like a bakery. And even at bakeries, if it was a very wealthy and successful bakery, they may own slaves that help make their food. And I know what you're thinking. Why wouldn't they just poison the food and kill their master, right? Only problem is it's kind of like a bread co. Their master might not necessarily be eating that bread, so you're poisoning it, killing innocent Romans potentially. So you'd be punished severely for that kind of stuff too. So like I said, they could revolt like that, but it wasn't often successful. It'd end up badly. Does anyone know why Jesus was crucified besides like as a punishment? Was there any other choice? Hey, Jack, you made it. Crucifixion in Rome was one of the most severe punishments because it would send a message to others. So when Jesus was crucified, it was the whole idea of it was so like that message would be sent to other people to not do what he did. So same thing would happen to slaves. You could be crucified for rebelling and stuff. And that's a very, very bad death. All right, how about a brain break? Do you want to watch a flow cab about Spartacus? Oh geez, did that? Okay. You see the flow cab, right? It loaded correctly? Yeah? Okay. All right, let me know. Do you hear this sound? Hold on, let me turn off the mic. Do you hear this sound? No? Yeah? No? Okay. Hold. I think there's a way for me to make it so the sound plays. There's a way for me to make the sound play. Give me half a second. I gotta remember where it was. Select microphone. Audio settings. Screen share. No. Rip. Okay, well, I'll play it over the microphone. It might not be too good, but it's better than nothing, right? Hashtag internet problems. All right, here we go. All right, I'm gonna move it away, so hopefully it's not super bad. Here we go.
Yo, Emilio, when you get those lights, turn those lights off. Get that dog in here, check it. Yo, they call me Spartacus. I was a
Rip. Rip. Hold. Oh. Okay.
Close. I'm like Vesuvius, baby. I mean, I'm set to blow. The Roman Republic got rich off of slaves' backs. So now I think we need some payback. Me and 69 guys stuck into the kitchen, got 69 lives. This is the beginning of the uprising, and we escaped ourselves. Spread the word to other slaves, you can escape as well. And they flocked to me. See, they wanted to see what life's like when you give us free. Like Julius Caesar, I led a whole movement. We had 120,000 humans. You wanna know who Spartacus is? I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Spartacus. Now the senators starting getting scared in Rome, cause we were plundering land near their summer homes. We were fearless. I was like, send your best generals, send me your Pompeii's and Caesars. I'm not a DJ, this hit's not the remix. We started this like Romulus and Remus. Slaves, join us if you've had enough. We moved on like water through an aqueduct. So you can pray to Jupiter, you can pray to Mars. You'll need more than gods, you'll be seeing stars. Now Rome had a problem, I'm Spartacus. And we fight to the death if you harming us. I didn't want this, I wanted peace, I wanted pacts, I wanted to be clean like a public bath. I want to walk with my daughter through Rome. In the forum, maybe hear a speech. In the Colosseum, see a show. The Roman legions came, and yes, they are well trained. I'd rather die free than live like a slave. I'll beat them back, I said I'll beat them back. I'm free now, and I'll never go back. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. 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 Spartacus.
Spartacus. I think the cool story about that, there's like all kinds of YouTube videos you can watch about him, but one of the coolest is like, you know how they kept saying I'm Spartacus? He himself didn't just keep saying that because it kind of sounds annoying, right? No, what the legend goes is like his armies, if you will, all broke up, and whenever the Romans would capture those slaves and start crucifying them and stuff, it was horrible, right? They would say, "Who's Spartacus?" And every single one of them would say, "I'm Spartacus." So like, they don't know what happened to him in the end. Ultimately, his rebellion fails, and they like crucified all the road from like southern Italy all the way to Rome. They crucified slaves on crosses all the way up that road. So any slave who was being walked to Rome would know what happens to slaves who rebel. That's how horrible Rome was. Crazy. All right. We're going to stop there for today. We will pick up with, what is it? Our Roman beliefs starting tomorrow. We'll kind of do the same thingamabobber. All you need to do for today, just if you wrote your notes, just take a picture on your phone or with your Chromebook or whatever and attach that on that assignment I posted. And if you typed your notes on your phone or on your Chromebook, just add that doc that you typed on. And actually tomorrow when we kind of start on those notes again, you can just type onto that same doc. That'd be cool. So you don't have to add another one later. Sound good? Cool. Well, everyone, be safe. Have a good day. Good luck with science. Tilt to the earth. Good stuff. It's fun. It's fun. All right. Hopefully that sound wasn't too horrible. People got questions over the video. Luca, you got a question before you go?
No, I don't.
Okay, rip, bye. Claire, you got a question?
Yeah, I don't see the thing on the classroom.
Did you refresh it? It should be there. Rip, I posted that on 6th grade. Sorry, 8th grade.
Is it
I'll let me repost
Did you
that.
post it?
I posted on 8th grade by accident.
Oh.
So I'll post one up there again here in a second, okay? Thanks for saying something. iPhone person, is this Evan? Hello? Rip in the chat. Hey Cam, how you doing? Cam, you're live on Lineac Show. What's up? Rip.
What's up, Mr. Lynette?
Hello. Hello. Connor, you got a question?
Yeah. Where do I turn in the document if I typed it?
I'm gonna make that right now.
Okay.
I accidentally posted to 8th grade, so I'm gonna post that
Well, okay.
right now. Coolio. Anyone else? Jack. Hello. Welcome.
I don't know what was happening. I think the links were wrong because it wasn't working until Jacob sent me. Jake sent me a thing, and also considering I wasn't here for like the beginning where we had to take notes. Is there like any way I can still see those?
Yeah, send me an email. I got a video I'll send you, okay? Of like what you missed. Coolio.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Andrew, what's up? Hold on. You should be unmuted. Did you? Oh, there you go.
Yeah. It won't pop up in my drive to turn them in.
The type notes.
Yeah, I have them right here.
Oh, did you take the picture? Gotcha. Did you do?
No, I typed them on my phone.
Oh, gotcha. Did you type it on your school account?
The drive. It won't let me like search.
You still have it open?
Yeah.
Try and like share it, like to yourself. See if you could do that. Yeah, Brock.
Can I just share it to you?
Yeah, that's fine. And then
Wait,
from
So do you go on? Is it in Google Classroom, right? The assign Rome notes in the presentation.
it is now. Boom! It should be there now.
Right now, you're supposed to.
Yes.
Alright. I shared it to you.
Thank you. And now look in your drive real quick. I think it may have popped up for you now. Google's kind of weird
Oh, yeah.
when you email it. It'll
Yeah,
like.
it just said the stream was updated. It just said the stream.
I think I had it for 6A, but I selected the wrong class for 6B. Regardless,
Oh, I have a question.
y'all.
At 104, and
Got
then
it.
it wasn't started yet. So I thought it was at 145.
Just send me an email, Cam. I'll have a video I'll send back. Okay.
Okay.
What's up, Cameron?
Okay. This is an iPhone.
Connor, do you have a question or
I don't
anything?
know who iPhone is. I just saw that.
No, I accidentally my hand just
Cool. Okay. Lowered. All right, coolio. Well, I'll catch you tomorrow. I'm gonna send another invite for you. You should be able to attach your notes on Google Classroom now. And
This slide, you gotta.
yeah, send me an email if you, Jack and Cam, and I'll send you back a link for you. Okay.
Okay.
Coolio. All right. Good.
iPhone X cap.
Good luck with your science homework or science work, unless you finished it.
I did.
That's sweet.
I finished it. Oh, your cat!
Why is there a goat on the iPhone screen?
That's Evan's cat. That's Simba. No, that's
Simba.
Simba and Gypsy. Evan, is that Simba or Gypsy?
Which one?
I think that's Gypsy.
Yep.
Simba's gray.
Rip. Where's Simba?
I don't know.
Evan was walking his cat around his backyard yesterday.
So funny. And Evan, remember when Gypsy hit the frog off the stairs?
Yeah. Gypsy hit a frog off of our deck.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That dog is a baller. And was that one camouflage one you showed me on
Yeah, I showed you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most like relaxed and passy outy cat I've seen. Usually they're like, "Why are you looking at me, man? I need to go to bed." And then they run away. Man. All right. I'll catch you all tomorrow. If you came in late or whatnot, you missed some stuff, just shoot me an email, okay? But I'll send you a Zoom thingy-mabobber for tomorrow. We'll do the same thing.
Bye.
Bye. You want me to leave this open so you can chit-chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.